Imagine wandering the dark streets of ancient Greece, shadows stretching from every corner, unsure if something sinister is lurking in the night, waiting for you. These weren't your typical vampires with fangs and cloaks. They were far worse. They were nightmarish spirits, demons, and monsters who thrived on fear and, in some cases, human blood. Meet the creatures that haunted Greek myths long before the vampires we know today: Empusa, Lamia, Mormo, and the Strix. Talk about a terrifying bunch, huh? I bet even Dracula himself would have been shaking in his boots. Welcome to the history realm. Today, we're diving deep into the dark heart of ancient Greece to explore the closest things they had to vampires. These tales are creepy, tragic, and filled with spine-tingling details. So grab a torch, you'll want the light for this one, and maybe a clove of garlic just in case. In ancient Greece, few creatures could rival the terror of the Empusa. Said to be daughters of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft and the underworld, these creatures weren't just lurking threats. They were cunning, seductive, and ruthless. The Empusa were known for their unique ability to shift shape. They could appear as beautiful young women to lure unsuspecting men into their deadly embrace, transforming their forms to deceive and ensnare their prey. But beneath this beauty lay something truly terrifying. The real form of an Empusa was horrifying. They had one brass leg and a leg made of a donkey's hoof. Their monstrous appearance served as a reminder that they were creatures of Hecate, beings who existed between worlds. The brass leg symbolized their unnatural, almost mechanical strength, while the donkey's leg represented their connection to wild, chaotic forces. I guess you could say they put the ass in badass. Now imagine being an ancient Greek man traveling alone at night. In the distance, you see a beautiful woman beckoning to you. Perhaps you think it's a blessing from Aphrodite or a stroke of good luck. But as you get closer, you notice something's off. The closer you get, the more you sense a twisted malevolence. Before you can react, she transforms, revealing her demonic form and lunges at you. According to Aristophanes in the Frogs, meeting an Empusa meant one thing: death. They wouldn't simply kill their victims, they drained them of blood, feeding on their very life essence. But what was the purpose of this gruesome existence? The Empusa were said to be agents of Hecate, haunting crossroads and dark places where people were most vulnerable. Crossroads were seen as points of transition, where the spiritual and physical worlds met. An Empusa could be seen as a warning, a threat to anyone straying from the safe path or making reckless choices. The Greeks believed that Hecate dispatched the Empusa to remind mortals of their limits. If you dared to wander too far from what was safe, an Empusa could be waiting, ready to strike. Empusa weren't just monsters. They became part of the cultural fabric, instilling fear of temptation and dangerous attractions. Their story likely served as a caution against indulging in dark desires, reminding people of the price of succumbing to vice. The myth of the Empusa was a constant reminder that one wrong step could lead to disaster, especially when alone in the dark. So, next time you're thinking about taking a midnight stroll, remember, curiosity killed the cat, but an Empusa killed the Greek. Lamia is perhaps one of the most tragic yet horrifying figures in Greek mythology, blending sorrow, vengeance, and horror into a single creature. Unlike the Empusa, who were creatures of pure malice, Lamia's story begins with heartbreak and tragedy. Once a beautiful queen of Libya, Lamia caught the eye of Zeus. Their affair quickly drew the wrath of Hera, Zeus's famously vengeful wife. Hera's jealousy was not just harsh, it was cruel. She cursed Lamia, causing her to lose her own children. The pain and grief from this curse were so overwhelming that they twisted Lamia into something monstrous. Lamia's beauty faded, replaced by a serpent-like appearance, with lower limbs that were scaly and serpentine. The horror of her transformation didn't stop there. She also developed a ravenous hunger for the blood of children. Consumed by grief, Lamia became a creature of the night, preying on children and young people. Her tragedy and torment made her relentless, forever seeking the lives of others to compensate for her own losses. Lamia's story wasn't just about horror. It was also a reflection of Greek beliefs about the power of vengeance and the consequences of divine wrath. Her tale serves as a reminder of Hera's merciless nature and the darker side of Greek divinity. Lamia was often blamed for sudden illnesses in children or unexplainable deaths. In fact, her legend became so widespread that parents would tell children to behave, or else Lamia would come for them in the night. The original, "Go to bed," or "the boogeyman will get you" story. But what really cemented Lamia's terror was her supernatural ability to remove her own eyes. Ancient texts suggest that Lamia could take out her eyes and place them beside her while she slept, only to reattach them later. This act symbolized her disconnection from humanity, as though her vision wasn't bound by physical laws. In some versions of the tale, Zeus, out of pity, granted her the power to remove and replace her eyes, so she would not constantly have to witness her own anguish. Lamia's hunger for blood and her obsession with children have made her one of the closest figures to a vampire in ancient Greece. She was both a mother driven mad by loss and a monster who couldn't resist her terrible urges. Lamia's legacy has continued through the ages, even influencing the idea of the vampire queen in later literature. Her tale served as a stark warning about the dangers of envy, loss, and the monstrous potential lurking within us all. If you're fascinated by these dark and ancient tales, don't forget to hit the like button to support the channel. It helps us bring more legendary stories to your feed. Mormo was another terrifying figure in Greek mythology, especially for young children. While Lamia's story is one of sorrow turned to horror, Mormo was pure nightmare fuel from the start. Often associated with Hecate, Mormo was believed to be a demon or night spirit with an insatiable appetite for children's flesh and blood. Greek parents would invoke Mormo as a way to scare children into obedience, warning them that Mormo would come for them if they misbehaved. But Mormo's horror wasn't just about eating children. In some tales, Mormo was described as having the ability to shapeshift, taking on appearances that would lull children or parents into a false sense of security. She could imitate familiar voices or disguise herself as a kind-looking figure, only to reveal her monstrous nature when it was too late. One particularly frightening detail about Mormo was her voice. Some legends say that she could perfectly mimic human voices, calling out to her victims in the night. Imagine being a child and hearing a friendly voice in the darkness, only to discover too late that it was Mormo luring you to your doom. Her voice was a powerful weapon, and her shape-shifting ability made her a master of deception. Mormo's name became synonymous with terror in ancient Greece, used almost like a boogeyman to enforce good behavior. But unlike modern boogeyman tales, Mormo wasn't just a shadowy figure in the night. She was an active, predatory creature who could reach beyond the physical world. In some accounts, Mormo would wear the faces of her victims, donning them like masks to lure new prey. This gruesome image reinforced the idea that Mormo was a creature of malice and cruelty, a relentless spirit who would stop at nothing to satisfy her cravings. Mormo's association with Hecate also added to her power. As a follower of the goddess of witchcraft in the underworld, Mormo wasn't bound by the same rules as mortals. She could travel between worlds, between human and spirit realms, making her an ever-present threat. Mormo represented an unpredictable danger, an evil that couldn't be reasoned with or escaped. So next time your kids complain about a strict bedtime, just be thankful you're not enforcing it with the threat of Mormo. The Striges, or Strix, were another class of monstrous beings in Greek mythology that shared traits with later vampire legends. The Strix were often depicted as owl-like creatures of the night that thirsted for blood, particularly the blood of infants and children. Unlike the Empusa or Lamia, Strix weren't shapeshifters or seductresses. They were straightforward predators who operated like beasts in the night. The Greeks believed that these creatures could slip through windows or doors, silently entering homes to suck the blood of infants as they slept. Parents feared the Strix to such a degree that they developed protective rituals, placing amulets near their children's beds or performing nightly prayers to protect them. The mere presence of an owl near a home could be enough to strike terror into the hearts of parents, as they associated it with the coming of a Strix. In some versions, Strix were actually transformed women or witches who had been cursed, turning into bloodthirsty birds that lived in perpetual darkness. This idea likely came from the association of owls and other night birds with witchcraft and omens of death. Ovid, the Roman poet, describes the Strix in his work Fasti, painting them as demonic creatures who attack their victims in sleep, draining life with their hooked beaks and talons. But the Strix wasn't just a bird. It was a creature of dark magic, associated with curses and the unholy. If a family was plagued by a Strix, they believed it was a sign of divine displeasure or a witch's curse. The blood-drinking habits of the Strix made it a proto-vampire, even inspiring later legends of vampiric spirits in other cultures. In fact, the very term Strix became associated with vampires in later European folklore, linking this creature's legacy to the modern vampire myth. The Greeks and Romans lived in a world where infant mortality was a common tragedy, and creatures like the Strix offered an explanation, however terrifying, for sudden and unexplainable loss. By creating monsters like the Strix, they externalized the fear of death, disease, and misfortune, giving these forces a face, albeit a monstrous, feathered one. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the History Realm for more chilling tales, mythical mysteries, and future updates. Check out the video above for even more stories from the ancient world.